Okay, is this on? Yep, I got it. I actually don't probably need a mic, but I'll pretend like I do. So, my name is Jamie Williams. I am so excited to see a packed house. This is very rewarding to see this kind of come to fruition. We have had, or I guess I had the pleasure of having a conversation with this lovely student behind me that motivated me to help her make this happen. So we share a common goal for helping reduce infant mortality and to help bring awareness to our community related to the intersectionality and disparities that really play a big role in a lot of babies not making it to their first birthday. So I am so happy that everybody was able to join us. We do plan to make this a series of events. So take out infant mortality and replace it. Already had some great conversations with some people with some ideas going forward. So keep your eye out for future events. And if you have any ideas, please share. So as this day is going to kind of look, I'm going to let Tori introduce the speakers, and then we'll hear from them at the end. There was cards out front, or however you choose to write down your questions, or if you're bold enough, then you are welcome to ask them. At the end, we'll have a Q&A. And then also, I'd like to give the people in the audience that are representing an organization a time to stand up and just tell the room why you're here, what you're about, and maybe give a contact information. And then we'll also share the roster with emails to everybody that's here. So be looking for that. Any questions yet? Okay, so this is Tori Vance. I'm going to introduce her. She is a freshman nursing student in our program. Every day I have to remind myself that she is a freshman. We have mutual conversations that blow my mind on a regular basis. So she came to me with the conversation of, I want to bring this topic to U of E and really spread the word. So I said, let's make it happen. So this is Tori Vance.
Well, good morning, everyone. Like she was saying, my name is Tori Vance. I am a freshman nursing student here at the University of Evansville, and I have the honor of introducing today's panelists. So first up, we have Dr. Thomas Stratton. Thomas L. Stratton is a native of Kentucky and is in fact a Kentucky colonel, and yet has found himself at home in Evansville since 2009. He obtained his BA in history from Transylvania University, after which he served as a field artillery officer in the U.S. Army. He never made real colonel or even major. Thomas met Valerie Stein during his service, and they married while he was stationed abroad. After his service, Thomas eventually settled on a non-traditional path into medicine. As a physician, Dr. Stein holds closely to the notion that healthcare is a human right. In consequence, he does strive to meet people where they are clinically, and to pay special attention to the historical exclusion healthcare has crafted, particularly against Black and brown communities, women, those living with disabilities, those experiencing homelessness, LGBTQIA+ communities, and new Americans. In addition to his full-time practice at the Community Health Center, Thomas serves as the Health Committee Chair for the Evansville branch of the NAACP. He's recently delved back into poetry, but he will keep that day job. Next up, we have Lynn Herr. Lynn Herr serves as the Director of Clinical and Outreach Divisions at the Vanderburgh County Health Department. With a dedicated focus, she strives to enhance the health outcomes of vulnerable populations, particularly of women and children. Lynn began her journey by earning an associate degree in nursing from the University of Evansville in 1984, followed by her Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Southern Indiana. Her commitment to pediatric care led her to become a certified pediatric nurse in 2009. Before assuming her role at the County Health Department in 2016 as the Fetal, Infant, and Child Fatality Coordinator, Lynn held various positions at St. Vincent here in Evansville, including Staff RN, Pediatric Educator, and Trauma Coordinator. Lynn's expertise spans across multiple domains, including public health, fetal, infant, and child fatality, maternal and infant outcomes, home visitation, and advocacy for community partnerships. Next is Larissa Madison. Larissa Madison is an international board-certified lactation consultant, also referred to as IBCLC, as well as a registered nurse, based in Evansville, Indiana. Larissa holds a Master of Science in Nursing Education, named the Booby Whisperer by coworkers and staff. Larissa has been working with mothers, birthing people, infants, and families for over 23 years. Currently, Larissa works as an IBCLC at Deaconess Women's Hospital. Larissa assists with inpatient and outpatient lactation services, telecommunication consults, and community lactation classes. Larissa is also an instructor for the maternal care practice course at Deaconess. In addition, Larissa is the only known practicing Black IBCLC in Southwest Indiana. Larissa, give that up. In addition, Larissa serves on the Opioid Settlement Advisory Board, the Mobile Care Community Advisory Council. She is a member of the Black Nurses of Evansville Association and a YWCA mentor. In 2012, Larissa established the only lactation support group. The Wildflower is geared toward assisting Black women and families in the community. The mission of Wildflowers is to encourage, educate, promote, and support lactation within the Center City. Lastly, Larissa has been married to George for nearly 29 years. Together, they have married 4 amazing children, Christney, Kennedy, Trey, Mille. Larissa is also Meemaw to baby girl Drew Annies. And then last up, we have Dr. Trinissa Brooks. Dr. Trinissa Brooks is a culturally responsive trauma-informed practitioner. Specifically, her focus is on the healing-centered engagement, community-based leadership, and equitable practices in education. She has experience working in P through 12 education, both at the school and district level. Her approach is found on an asset-based framework that values the experiences people bring to the table. She strongly believes transformative change in education occurs through effective homeschool and community partnerships using evidence-based interventions. Her background is in adverse childhood experiences, intercultural development inventory, and mind, body, and medicine. Without further ado, we will get started with our panel discussion.
So as per normal, we make game time decisions, and we changed up the order just a little bit. We're actually going to start with Lynn Herr, so let's welcome Lynn.
Is this the clicker? Yeah, okay. So again, my name is Lynn Herr, and for some of you, this will not be new information. I was really hoping before this came out that we had 2022 data, but we don't. So we're going to look at 2021 and kind of discuss a little bit and kind of lay the framework for the rest of this wonderful group to be able to talk about some of the disparities that we see within the infant mortality information. So we're kind of going to look at the natality, which is all of our birth outcomes, and then also fatality, which means infant death, okay? And then what the Vanderburgh County Health Department is doing to combat some of these issues, and then take any questions at the end with everybody else to be able to do that. So just letting you guys know that here in the United States, we do not do well when it comes to infant mortality. We pay a very large amount for our insurance and our health care, but that doesn't translate into the best outcomes for our mothers and our babies. And then we're in a state that does not do well. Indiana, as a whole, has scored within the lowest quartile for decades. And one of the reasons we score in the lowest, and everyone around here will make little jokes about Kentucky. Surely Kentucky can't do better than Indiana. Yeah, they do. But one of the reasons why Indiana has not done well is that we really, as a state, have not embraced public health as a whole. We really have not looked at our vulnerable populations and said we're going to make that a priority. Just recently, in the last year, the governor's Commission on Public Health increased and almost doubled our funding at the local health department. So we're hoping with increased funding, and there is a lot of research out there that actually supports the more money you put into maternal child health, you actually get a better outcome. So we're really hopeful that instead of ranking 43rd, and we go anywhere from 43rd or 40th to 45th. So again, we're hoping for better outcomes. Our demographics in our city and our county are changing dramatically. When I first started, which was just 8 years ago at the health department, we had 87% of our births were white births. That has changed dramatically with more of a black or multiracial birth, and that is also related to our immigrant population, or our new Americans. Again, with our birth outcomes or our birthing numbers changing, we have, as a community, have to change with it. Preterm births. We know that babies before 37 weeks or weigh less than 5.5 pounds have a much higher risk of death. And again, you don't see much difference there, do you? But it changes dramatically after that. So again, looking at how much our babies weigh, our black babies in our community, our Hispanic babies in our community are not born as big, they don't weigh as much, and they are born sicker. And that is a direct outcome of our infant mortality or our infant death numbers. So again, you can see there that our black low birth weight, meaning less than 5.5 pounds, is almost double in our black population than our white population. And this is from long-standing practices that have not changed. Okay, so as a community, we've got to look at those and make sure that that changes. Again, looking at those very low birth weights, those babies born less than 3 pounds. It's, again, more than double. So we have room for improvement. Early prenatal care, again, close to double, especially over double for our Latina or Hispanic mothers. And that is in direct relationship to getting insurance, getting Medicaid, getting the things that they need to be able to seek and get quality prenatal care. We know that women that are seen in their first trimester and get at least 10 visits have a much, much higher chance of living till their first birthday. Mothers on Medicaid, you can look there, and these are 2021 numbers. They change somewhat, but not a whole lot. Again, making sure that we have plenty of providers and that our mothers that are supported by Medicaid, they get the same quality care that everyone else does that has private insurance. And we do see a disparity within our private insurance. When you look at mothers on Medicaid versus mothers with private insurance, we see about a 20-fold increase in loss within our Medicaid population, regardless of the color of their skin. So we have work to do. Now, granted, our women that are on Medicaid probably have a lot more challenges in life than what those on private insurance. But one of our communities in Baltimore that had some of the worst outcomes, their number one initiative in that community was making sure they had more jobs with private insurance, and they made a huge difference in their infant mortality numbers. So just something to think about. Again, teen births, we're seeing a more than double, almost triple within our black population, and double of our Hispanic population. And that's really kind of an uptake in making sure that our young women take control of their reproductive health, and making sure that if we have a baby in our teens, we don't repeat that again. We know that teen outcomes are not the same as our early 20s. But I will tell you, this does not translate as much into loss. Our teen moms get support. Their families rally around them. They get services. Where we see our losses is in our 23 to 29-year-olds, where they're kind of on their own. Everyone feels like they're old enough, they've got this, That's where we see our losses, and that's where we need to concentrate our support. Maternal tobacco use. Again, this is now going to be reported out a little bit different with nicotine use because we see such a high vaping statistic within our community. A lot of folks don't understand that vaping can be just as dangerous and that nicotine can be just as dangerous to the infant that they're carrying. Our Hispanic population historically does not embrace tobacco use, and we as a community, and smoke-free communities is here, we need to do better, and that can go with a lot of interventions, with a lot just getting our community to understand that an increased smoking tax or tobacco tax, nicotine tax can make a difference. I did not talk about education, and I did not talk about breastfeeding because I have wonderful people here on our panel in which are going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. Again, just a quick snapshot. Here in Indiana, we do not have a white infant mortality problem. We have a black infant mortality problem, and that is very obvious in the data that I've got up here on the screen. That you can see consistently our black mothers and infants are suffering the loss of life. Here is a quick snapshot because we see ups and downs in the local level and those numbers are not as huge. You can consistently see that our black infant mortality rate is much higher than our white infant mortality rate. Following the blue line, that is exactly about, you can see when the Hispanic population truly migrated here to Evansville. You could see the sharp rise, and you can see when Medicaid, emergency Medicaid and Medicaid services were put in place for our most vulnerable, and then their rates have come down. This is not unique to Vanderburgh County. This is across our state and the United States, where their outcomes because of their white skin, for the most part, or brown skin, has allowed them for better outcomes. Just to let you know, Vanderburgh County now, just this last year, is now the third highest for black infant mortality rate. For the 2 years prior, they were second highest. We do take a 5-year aggregate or a 5-year average of our black infant mortality rates because we want to make sure those numbers are high enough that statistically it makes a difference. So we're ranking number third at 16.9, completely unacceptable for our community and not how we want to be known. I am going to put a disclaimer on this slide that we're now third. There's another county that has kind of jumped up and taken the #1 place, and it is in northern Indiana. But we are behind. Vanderburgh County is behind Gary, behind Indianapolis, and behind Fort Wayne. That's not where we need to be. Again, what do? We as a health department are charged to take care of the most vulnerable. So we have put a program together for home visitation to make sure that we're supporting those families where they are, not expecting people to come to us, but meeting them where they are. Another thing we do is also looking at each individual case of infant loss through our fetal infant mortality, or FEMOR, and we have a wonderful group, and I'm looking out over this group and seeing so many of those individuals that are part of our community action team. We are currently putting together as a community service a care mobile to be out in the community in our most vulnerable zip codes, making sure that in our 47713 zip code that we are concentrating on that. It has our highest infant mortality, which is at about 22. It is not acceptable. And just letting you know, there's no grocery store in 47713. There are a lot of problems within our city that we need everyone in the community to be aware of. But making sure that we are meeting women and their families where they are is so important. not only for our pre to 3 program, but for all home visitation programs within the cities. We have to support our families. The program objectives you can see up there, we want to make a stronger community. We want to get out of intergenerational issues. We want our babies and our families to strive for excellence. We want to address ACE scores, which I know that Ms. Brooks is going to speak of. We want to make sure that we're changing things for our community. Anyone can enroll in our program. That we felt like it was very important if we're going to support our families locally, that it doesn't matter how many babies you've had, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter your circumstance whatsoever. We're going to accept you into what I feel like is a family. It is very important that our home visitation looks like the families that we're serving. Again, making sure that they have clinical support. If there's nursing issues or medical issues, that we can help advocate for those families, that we can answer those questions that only maybe a clinical person does. We want to make sure that we have client advocates. So if there's housing insecurity, if there's food insecurity, that individuals that look like them, that are culturally like them, are able to assist. And that is why our home visitation is so diverse, with individuals that have skin the same color as them, that they speak the language. We have 2 Creole speaking community health workers, which is so important. We have 5 that speak Spanish. So we're making sure that we're delivering linguistically and culturally competent, trauma-informed care to those individuals so that they can have the best outcomes for their families. Again, then just talking about the community health workers that are at the base and the structure, the foundation of what we do, making sure that they can educate families and support them, not talking to them, but supporting them in their journey for their families. Data is very important. You're going to see that with a lot of us. We do collect a lot of screenings to make sure that our families get where they need to be. We want to make sure, and this was last quarter, so we're up over 260 families that we're currently seeing. We're really focusing on our most at-risk zip codes, which are 47713, 47714, and 11, that have the poorest outcomes. So we're really focusing on those. We've had several more babies since then, which we love. We celebrate each and every baby that's born within our program. But then again, making sure that we're serving the most vulnerable. About 70% of the folks that we serve are on Medicaid, and about 35% make less than $15,000 a year. You guys try to live on that. Making sure that they have a roof over their head, and making sure that they get the services that they need, and that we're there to support them and not talk at them, but with them. Again, with the best outcomes that we can actually provide for our families. We want to make sure that with our community efforts, and if anyone has any other ideas of what we can do to support our families, hopefully I've laid a foundation. There's a lot more information that I could give you, but I really want to make sure that our other panelists have time to talk. Thank you.
And please don't forget to be jotting down your questions at the end. Hopefully we'll have plenty of time to answer those, or we can always send them via email and you can get a personal response. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Stratton. I forgot this is my responsibility too.
All right, can everyone hear me? Okay. All right. So I'm here because I believe healthcare is a human right. I'm here because we will all be called to answer in the future. I'm here because I believe in the power of the village. As Reverend Joanne Hunter has phrased it, I believe in the power of the Evans village. I'm here because Ms. Arlinda Payne asked me. To not say no to Arlinda Payne, this is the beginning of wisdom. Of all the forms of injustice, inequality in health is the most shocking and inhuman. When Dr. King uttered these words, he wouldn't have known about the Tuskegee experiments still underway. Those horrific trials targeting black men, many of whom were sharecroppers, would only enter the public eye 4 years after MLK's assassination. But he spoke a truth that had held for generations, for centuries, and which persists to this day. Medicine is a human enterprise with all the frailties that entails, and like many institutions, faces a long overdue reckoning if we have the courage. It's high time we hold these truths to be self-evident that racism was already baked into Thomas Jefferson's America, which was so close and so far away from Sally Hemings' America. We didn't need Confederate flags and Klan robes to show it. And after centuries of struggle, it's not like the Civil Rights Act of 1964 or the Voting Rights Act of 1965 baked it back out. And even though some these days want to protect us from the burden of knowledge, the reality is racism, which is alternatively and compellingly framed by Isabella Wilkerson and others as casteism, permeates our lives, as if it's in the very air and water. Hell, if we look at Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi, it's literally in the water. To get at persistent health inequities, we obviously have to look at the social determinants of health, particularly how disparities have been socially engineered and driven by policy. Policy like redlining, crafted and sustained at federal, state, and local levels across the country, not just in the former Confederacy. Systems built to uphold white power. Since the collapse of Reconstruction and the choice to refuse to make restitution or reparation for generations of unrequited servitude, we also have to look directly at healthcare as a system, which is one of the social determinants of health. That is to say, let's not conflate healthcare with health. Consider healthcare in this community. Look at the redlining map and the bend in the river. Is that an artifact? A historical curiosity? Go to Evansville Metro Development site and find the Bowen report from 2016. Read the socioeconomic and wellness metrics. See how they overlay on this map. So today, where does a family expecting a baby need to go within one of the two major health systems to receive prenatal care and particularly to deliver? I'm not quite sure it's on this map. It is, in fact, in the next county. We might call it a threshold, a doorway, or a gateway. So many barriers. And in Indiana, this right to life state, I still have patients, including children, who cannot receive now and may never be able to obtain medical coverage because of accident of birthplace. We have built this. The myriad forms of economic and racial injustice are an American tapestry, and medicine's thread is woven throughout as much as our carceral state and environmental racism. So if you doubt this, ask yourself who laid hands on, probed and inspected the human bodies emerging from cargo holds after the hellish transatlantic crossing as being fit for sale other than physicians, than surgeons. An Army physician had legal claim to the body and personhood of Dred Scott, and the Supreme Court of the United States decided Mr. Scott's personhood did not even exist. Within OB/GYN, obstetrics and gynecology, consider the until very recently revered Dr. J. Marion Sims, the father of gynecology, a slaver who perfected his surgery for pelvic fistulas on the non-consensual bodies of enslaved women. Harrowing and excruciating ordeals without consent and without anesthesia upon black bodies for the benefit of white people. We have names of only 3 of his victims, and we should say their names now, please. Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy. Furthermore, let's imagine what it would be, what it would have been for the Federal Republic of Germany to raise a statue in honor of Dr. Josef Mengele in Potsdamer Platz or at the Brandenburg Gate. It is unthinkable. And yet, that statue of J. Marion Sims was in Central Park. The American Medical Association, the AMA, spent decades at least accommodating and generally elevating segregation across the United States. This includes the post-war Hill-Burton Act, formerly known as the Hospital Survey and Construction Act of 1946, which stipulated equitable provision in cases where separate hospital facilities are provided for separate population groups. Now, this wasn't some Jim Crow holdover. This was introduced within living memory and accepted by the medical establishment, led by the AMA. And remember that the body of segregation laws across the U.S., known as Jim Crow, was meticulously studied and adapted and adopted by the National Socialists in Germany as they enacted their own racial codes that set the stage for the death camps. So the lynching tree here and the furnaces there, worlds apart, but bound together in purpose. And the American articulation of that philosophy was fully supported by the AMA and had been since its founding in the 19th century, thereby necessitating the National Medical Association, which finally created a safe and nurturing space for black health professionals. Spaces that were claimed by the powerful legacies of Dr. David Jones Peck, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, Mary Eliza Mahoney, Dr. Julia Pearl Hughes, Dr. Charles Drew, and Evansville's own Dr. George Washington Buckner, and Dr. C.K. Newsom, as well as the ongoing work of the eternally unretired Ms. Arlinda Payne, Dr. Pearl Corty. I will mention also Dr. Denisha McCall, among many more. But how many more might there have been? So still the struggle, and there is a deep connection between representation and practice of healthcare, or the lack thereof. We see sensors and algorithms built upon white skin as a default when seeing differences matters greatly, or which imagine physiologic differences based on assumptions and generations of received wisdom by a system built by and for whiteness. The bogus GFR racial correction factor, for instance, has had serious equity implications in preventing, diagnosing, and treating kidney failure and eligibility for transplant. We've seen COVID expose and exploit long-standing disparities. We've heard researchers in Europe suggest that novel COVID vaccines be tested first on sub-Saharan African populations. We can tell ourselves we don't see color, but even the J&J brand Band-Aids get the lie to that. Breaking disparity and building equity, belonging, and accountability will take more than Band-Aid answers. We know representation and belonging matter greatly for equitable healthcare provision and outcomes. Yet we still struggle to recruit, hire, retain, and elevate black health professionals. When less than 4% of university medical faculty are black, we are failing. And some of this goes back to those social determinants of health, social determinants of many things, not just health. Healthcare professionals have had to access the education system and navigate a few hurdles, a few gateways. And equity has not been built into these gateways and hurdles, has it? The Supreme Court of the United States has determined systemic efforts toward equity are themselves a problem. And that's yet another lecture. I'll just say it. White power and white fragility will be preserved at the end of the day if we allow it. Social determinants include education access and quality. So where does, if you can see it, you can be it, fit into early child education? Where is it practiced? Contrast that with where is the school to prison pipeline? And where is that practiced? Who is being told, like Malcolm, you can't be a lawyer or a surgeon or a composer? Who has not had the resources to complete a FAFSA or even know about a FAFSA or the funds to pay for college entrance exams? On and on. As to particular effects of inequities in prenatal and maternal care, the compelling evidence is that racism and not race is a major factor, a major cause beyond what economic status alone does. Today, a college-educated black woman is more likely to give birth prematurely than a white woman with a high school diploma. And you've heard the harrowing, appalling, disparate maternal mortality numbers. Behind the numbers are painful truths and traumas, and if we listen to people, if we listen to women, if we listen to women of color, if we listen to black women, and Beyonce Knowles and Serena Williams are obviously not the only ones with a voice and an urgent appeal. Now, if these stark differences could be attributed to race, then babies of women with sub-Saharan African ancestry should have very similar risks over time. But they don't. A landmark study published a generation ago looked at babies of immigrant women from West Africa and found those babies were more like white babies born here in America. They were bigger and more likely to be full term. But years after the initial survey, the authors looked at grandchildren of African immigrant women. These babies, these grandbabies, were born smaller than their own mothers had been at birth. On the other hand, grandchildren of white European immigrant women were bigger than their own mothers when they were born. What is it about growing up in America? You've heard the term weathering, I trust. Weathering isn't produced from nothing. There's something that drives it. A 2004 study reported the connection between a mother's experience of racism and birth outcomes. Quote, "It turned out that as a predictor of very low birth weight outcomes, these racial discrimination questions were more powerful than asking a woman whether or not she smoked cigarettes." John Brown. Does anybody know the name John Brown? Okay, there, you may know of the white ally and abolitionist who fought and gave his all for freedom, but I skipped over this part of a slide earlier. I'm talking about the other John Brown, a black man who endured, overcame, escaped, and spoke and wrote his truth. Harrowing experiments at the hands of the very revered Dr. Thomas Hamilton, which injected lies that is received by healthcare down to today about how black people experience pain, even the thickness of black skin. Dr. Thomas Hamilton and the lies his horrific experiments on human bodies injected into received medical knowledge, poison of our minds that lingers today in how health systems regard pain. So a 2016 study involving 222 medical students indicated a substantial portion of white students as well as residents retained false beliefs such as black skin is thicker than white skin. Those with more extensive false beliefs were more likely to rate a black person's pain as lower and provide less accurate treatment recommendations. 40% of first-year medical students, white first-year medical students, and 25% of medical residents held the false belief about skin thickness. Now, residents have graduated medical school. I haven't even mentioned Tuskegee again. Mistrust of medicine in in black communities has been well earned. Where does one learn this other than it's all around us? It's in the water and the air. And we may or may not be conscious of how society built on America's original sin and its progeny, convict leasing, sharecropping, Jim Crow, states' rights, and the new Jim Crow shape our views from the earliest age. This gets to implicit biases, which is its own lecture, of course. We all carry these, although how we carry them may differ. So know yourself and your assumptions, your automatic thinking. Go to Harvard's implied association test and try yourself across the domains: sex, race, skin tone, gender identity, gender roles, religion. Recognize that amygdala-driven process and begin the work to disrupt it in our own minds. Recognize the limits of our own experiences and knowledge and foster cultural humility. This is beyond cultural sensitivity and cultural competence. Find ways to build a pause or a beat into our thinking before our next encounter with a family or a community member. Build a space for empathy that at least imagines another's shoes. That's the individual and challenging work, that it's as fully necessary as systems work. So how did we get here? We got here intentionally, by policy, by design. These matters we've only touched on are not flaws to fix, but features of a system working exactly as it was built. These designs have shaped many of their social determinants of health, which in turn shape health outcomes. As for healthcare's role in this, in thought, word, and deed, by what we have done and by what we have left undone, this is what we've made and called care. So the question remains, where do we go from here? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that gave us a really solid background of the recognition of the problem, and now Dr. Brooks and Larissa are going to give us some action items to take with us today.
Good morning. Just like everyone on this panel, I was asked and voluntold by the Miss Payne to come and speak to you guys today. But I'm really happy to be here. Education is my passion, and I do work for the EVSC. I've been with them for almost 8 years now. And I do lots of work in the community. And so when I was asked to do this, it was a no-brainer, Ms. Payne. So thank you for always taking me out of my comfort zone. I appreciate that. So as Dr. Stratton and Lynn talked about, what I'm going to speak about today segues directly into what they've already talked about. Because whether you guys know it or not, a lot of everything that we're talking about today is intertwined. And the root cause of everything that we're talking about is pretty much the same as well when you are discussing the inequities. So I will, again, talk about the social determinants of education, the whole child, our growing culturally diverse population, chronic absenteeism, early intervention resources, and just resilience, because our children in our community are resilient. Does this slide look familiar? So what I did is, you can just cross the word health out and put education. We are directly seeing the same parallels in education. When I tell you that nothing is different, absolutely nothing is different. When you think about disparities, when you think about the root causes of our children in our schools and in our buildings, and you know, why they're struggling, or why, you know, their emotional dysregulation is off. These are the determinants. These are a direct result of that. There is many barriers when you talk to our student families. SES status, transportation is a huge issue nationwide. It should definitely be circled. Housing and food and healthcare, mental health, culture. Dr. Stratton and Ms. Lynn talked a little bit about the changing dynamics here in the Evansville region with our multicultural families and social support. I wish that there was something different that I can say about education that's different from what they've already said as far as what we are seeing, but there is not. It's verbatim. It's the same exact thing. Alrighty, so this picture is very meaningful to me because when you think about the social determinants of health, people tend to want to feel sorry for our kids, particularly in education. And on the left-hand side, unfortunately, you know, that's that fixed mindset that you typically see with a lot of people, particularly when you're talking about the social determinants of health. And also, let me just put out a disclaimer. When I talk about education, I'm not just talking about public education, because when you talk about 47713, 14, and 11, the students don't just attend public school. They attend our parochial schools, our charter schools, our private schools. And I mean, I can give you an example. You know, they're at Holy Rosary, I believe, or Christ the King, one of the two. I don't want to get it wrong. Our Haitian student and families a lot of them actually attend Holy Rosary or Christ the King. I'm not sure which one. But people don't really realize that. But where do they live? They live in 1-3, 1-4, and 1-1. So when you think about education, although the public school system is the third largest in Indiana, we're not just talking about the public school system. We're talking about all educational entities and where our student and families belong to. And the free choice program, you know, our students are not just limited to just attending public education anymore. They can go wherever they want. And so everyone is accountable, not just the public school system, but we all are accountable when you think about education and where our students are attending school. So on the right-hand side, all too often, you know, I hear the sympathetic stories about our students. Oh, you know, they feel sorry. Once you start feeling sorry for kids, you also start to lower expectations. And with lower expectations comes lower growth and less academic success. But I really want you guys to, and I know you already are, so I'm probably preaching to the choir, but in my introduction, she talked about asset base, and I always want to think about our students and our families from an asset base, a growth mindset. I do believe in high expectations. I believe that once you set that, whatever bar we set for kids, they are going to achieve it, or they're going to do their best, and it's up to us to help them to get there. So when you think about our youth and our student and families, let's think about them from an asset-based mindset. The deficit-based mindset, you know, when you hear about race and racism, you know, yes, internally, it doesn't make you feel good. However, just think about it as a learning opportunity, and think about our kids as amazing individuals who are in their developmental stages that are growing based off of the leadership and modeling that we are doing for them. And Tara Yoso, she believes in liberating education. Some of my research is on liberating education, school to prison pipeline, all of those things. And she talks about really looking at our students from a cultural standpoint, and everything that they bring to the table has value. So she coined the term community cultural wealth. Has anybody heard of that before? Okay. Well, you learned something new today. So, but Tara Yoso, she talked about community cultural wealth, meaning your family, your culture, your language, and all of the things that you bring to the table has value. And so that is really how I want us to really think about the youth and families in our community. So, when you think about the students in our community, particularly in the 477, 13, 14, and 11, I'm gonna. I wish I had a microphone. Does it work? Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I was feeling a little confined over there. So, but when you think about a lot of our students, stress it makes me sad, because a lot of our kids come to school stressed every single day. And where our kids are landing is right here underneath the stress load line. A lot of our kids coming from marginalized or underserved communities, in most cases, their basic needs are not being met. And so it's really up to us as an education system, as a community, to ensure that their basic needs are being met. So when you think about their basic needs, you're thinking about the biological level. So a culturally inclusive environment in which students, families, and staff have positive relationships, students feel a sense of belonging and are emotionally and physically safe in their school community. That is one of the things that we really try and do when the students come to us anywhere. But one of the things that we've noticed is when you have a kid who's not eating, who's not sleeping, they may be suffering from adverse childhood experiences. Adverse childhood experiences are experiences that happen to children or individuals ages 0 to 17 years old that are potentially traumatic events. And it's, a lot of our kids come to us in the education, I'll just say, with high ACE scores. So the higher your ACE score, the more dysregulated you are, and actually a high ACE score actually determines life expectancy. And so unfortunately, we do have lots of kids who come to us. These are the kids that Dr. Stratton is seeing. These are the kids that are on Lynn's caseload. The families, we're all intertwined. The families of these individuals, when they have several children, those children are coming primarily, I would say, to the public school system. And so we're all communicating, even though we're all working in different fields, we're all seeing the same issues. And so one of the things that we really have to focus on is if we want our students to reach the whole child, we have to be looking at those things at the biological level. The biological are your basic needs, right? And so that's one of the things that we really try and do and we really try and emphasize. And also, it's important for us to really create a culturally responsive environment and really to create those positive relationships. Relationships is the core to really making any of this work with what we're talking about today. So that's one of the things that we try and do is really to build those positive relationships. If we do not focus on the things that's beneath the stress load line, then we're not going to be able to get to the whole child. When you, I know back in the day, traditional education, people used to, academics was the main focus. Academics is still the main focus, but education has really shifted to looking at the whole child. That's psychosocial, that's emotional, that's cognitive, that's behavior, and that's academics. And so when you think about a lot of the kids who are coming to us who are struggling with emotional dysregulation or who have high ACE scores, one of the things that we really try and do is ensure that we're providing them with that safe environment and providing them with the necessities and the supports that they need so that they can reach skill development in the whole child to thrive in a global society. So again, we talked about culture. Some of the information that I was going to talk about has already been spoken, so I won't repeat it. But we here, I can say in the Evansville region, I know of, there's 50 different languages that are being spoken in the Evansville region. Particularly in the EVSC, we have 40 different schools. At every single school, there's one multilingual student at every school, and that's as of this year. There's about 1,300 and growing multilingual student and families. Let's see, Marshallese, Haitian Creole, and Spanish are our top 3 languages that we're seeing particularly. And I also believe, Dr. Stratton, that's the same in Lynn, and that's the same with what you guys are also seeing as well. And so again, even though I'm here talking about the importance of education, education is intrinsically linked to longer life expectancy. Unfortunately, some of our students and families who are living in the 13 and 11 and 14 zip code, they may not live as long as some of our children in our suburban areas. And that's just a fact. Not something that I made up, but that's just research, right? But that is why we're here today, so that we can eradicate that, right? Okay. And so, again, we are seeing a lot of changes. Communication, unfortunately, is a struggle. Right now in this region, we are in a reactive state. We are not prepared or equipped to deal with the growing culturally diverse population. And it's actually against the law. Like, people don't really realize it, but what is happening, and I know there's lots and lots of conversations that are being had because I'm a part of those conversations. And so there is good things that is happening. But for these particular families, in education and healthcare, these families are being done a disservice because the community is not prepared for what is happening. We are seeing culturally diverse students enroll at a rapid rate. And although it's March, it has not slowed down. And so it's changing. It is, education is changing, healthcare is changing, this community is changing. And I know there is a lots of conversation that is being had, but we must and we have to do a better job at making sure that we are providing accessible opportunities for all of our student and families. So when you think about healthcare, when you think about education, chronic absenteeism is a huge issue. It has been exacerbated post-COVID, and it's not just in this community, but it is nationwide. So attendance in the first month of school can predict poor attendance throughout the school year. Chronic absenteeism may prevent children from reaching early learning milestones. Frequent absences can shape adulthood. Irregular attendance can be a better predictor of whether students will drop out before graduation than their test scores. And by 6th grade, chronic absenteeism becomes a leader indication of high school completion. We are definitely seeing chronic absenteeism affect our community, but there are lots of things that are being done. And we collectively, I do feel like we can all come together and do a better job at really addressing chronic absenteeism. Because when our students are not in school, they're not learning. And one of the things that really ties in or aligns to what we're talking about today is our students who are chronically absent, can you guess where they live? Take a wild guess. Yeah, right? So do you see the trend? Do you see the commonality? Education, healthcare, and for all the reasons. So our students who are chronically absent, these are the same students who are sick, from whatever illnesses they have, and these are the same students who are going to see Dr. Stratton in his office. But these are also the same students that's living where Miss Larissa lives, right? And so when you look at the root cause of why our students are not coming to school, it's for the various reasons. It's because their biological needs are not being met. But these are the same students that we're asking to come into the classroom, have a seat in your chair, raise your hand, read a book, but yet they might have been molested, they didn't eat last night, they didn't sleep. All the ACEs, all the things are against them. So, again, chronic absenteeism is a major concern. In most school districts, if you do your research, about 40 to 50% in some school districts, students are chronically absent from school, right? That's significant. And we know that when our students are not in school, they are not learning. And education is the key to success. Education is the key to, pulling yourselves out of poverty. Education is the key to college. Education is the key to health, wealth, all the things. And so I do ask you all, because chronic absenteeism is a task that I'm really working on in my current job. When you see kids are not in school, ask them why. Ask them, why are you not in school? What do you need? How can I support you? Because those questions are not being really asked to the kids. There's lots of action, but actually talking to kids and asking them why, they'll tell you why. So please, if you can, help us when you see youth or families struggling to get their kids to school, or when you see kids who are not in school, please help us to figure out how to get them in school, because it is an epidemic and it's hurting our children and our future scholars who will be taking care of all of us someday. As far as some resources, in the EVSC, here are some resources. Early intervention is extremely important when you think about education and health and well-being. Evidence-based research suggests the earlier we can get to our kids, the better off they will be, right? That's Pre to 3, that's Dr. Stratton, that's Larissa, that's all of these things that we're doing here. And so in the EVSC, we have partnerships with K-Camp through United Way. That's a free kindergarten readiness program for kids who have never really been in preschool, and for some kids who also were in preschool. And they also have this partnership with in Ward County. And then we have On My Way to Pre-K in the EVSC as well. And these are just some locations that serve for On My Way to Pre-K. Cedar Hall, Culver, Daniel Words, Dexter, Evans, Fairlawn, and Scott. And these are just a few programs that are offered. I know Ms. Sabrina, we have CAPE. I know we have Building Blocks. There's a variety of early childhood interventions that will provide opportunities for our kids. And so we really do encourage you, for the kids the children and families that are out in the community, encourage them to sign up for these programs, because evidence-based practices suggest the earlier we can get kids in school, the better off that they will be. And we know that education determines life expectancy. I didn't make that up, but it determines life expectancy, and education determines just your outcome in life in general. And so I am a huge advocate for not only strength-based, looking at our kids with all the things that they bring to the table and serving as value, but also ensuring that the earlier we get to our kids, the better, and utilizing some of these programs is the exact way to go. So I love this picture. I added this picture because although we've talked about some things today that's very hard, our kids are resilient, and it's going to take all of us collectively as a community to continue to have these uncomfortable conversations, and to also, one of the things that sometimes I do feel like we fail to do is we fail to get the voice of actually the people and the kids. So I challenge all of you to we should not be making decisions about people when they don't have a say-so about the decision that we are making for them. And so the kids will tell you, not only do they show you that they're resilient, but they will tell you as well. And so I do challenge all of you to make sure that you are actually listening to the voice of the people. Again, not sympathy, but what? Empathy. And really looking at our families from a strength-based mindset, and understanding that education is one of the most important social determinants of health, and the best way for us to not only provide opportunities, accessibility, but also exposure to our student and families. Thank you.
Okay, last up for the morning is Larissa Madison.
Well, good morning. I can't say that it's Miss Arlinda that kind of tricked me to come here, but it's Jamie. She said, yeah, you've talked to my students, just come and answer a few questions. And I'm like, yeah, I can answer some questions, and here I am presenting. But I'm very happy to be here. I will tell you, I've been waiting a long time for somebody to give me a microphone so I can step on this soapbox. So we'll get started a little bit. I do want to talk about, and please tell me if you guys can't hear me. I do want to talk about how human milk saves lives. If we take a look at all of the, this one? Okay. So if we take a look at a lot of the campaigns that talk about infant mortality and SIDS, it seems as if human milk and breastfeeding, they're listed, but they often, in my opinion, are looked over and not really placed on the table as a piece of the puzzle. And so why does breastfeeding matter? Why does human milk make a difference? And so research has shown us that providing infants with breast milk or human milk for any amount of time reduces that baby's risk of SIDS by 36%. Now that's whether this baby received human milk for 2 months or 2 years. Any amount of breast milk that this baby receives reduces its risk. That's huge, right? That's huge, especially when we talk about the makeup of this community and what we are seeing in our babies, and especially our Black babies. So like I said, most campaigns conducted do talk about increasing breastfeeding rates as a strategy. So I kind of wanted, and that's just not me saying it, so I pulled up a couple of campaigns that we have here in Indiana, and this is the Indiana Hospital Association, the Patient Safety Initiative. And so if you look at this campaign, it lists infant safe sleep. We hear about that a lot. We hear a lot about not smoking and tobacco use. We hear a lot about the perinatal substance. We hear about the maternal safety bundles that we do at the hospital. And this is a diagram or a display that the health commissioner came up with. But we do see breastfeeding listed down there. It's on the table, but it's often looked over and not talked about or discussed. So this is the National Institute of Health, the African American Safe Sleep Booklet. Again, we have everything listed that we always talk about, that we hear about. Breastfeeding is on there, human milk is on there, but again, it's something that we just don't put out there, especially here in Vandenberg County in our community. So why does human milk make a difference in SIDS? And again, we're talking about infant mortality, our Black infants dying. And so when we look at human milk, and this is just a little piece of the puzzle, but research has shown that breastfed babies sleep differently than formula-fed babies. So what does that mean? Research has been done to show that breastfed babies sleep in a lighter state of sleep. So these babies have the ability to awake and arouse themselves a little bit more easier than babies who take formula bottles. We know that breastfed babies feed every 2 to 3 hours, right? So these babies are constantly waking up to feed, okay? Breast milk can digest in their bellies within 90 minutes. So for me, that's a protective factor that Mother Nature has given us to help protect these babies. When a baby takes a bottle of formula, that formula will sit on their bellies, and those babies will feed about every 4 to 5 hours. That same research shows that formula-fed babies sleep in a deeper state of sleep. And those babies have a harder time being aroused and waking themselves up out of their sleep. So just the biological makeup of human milk is made to protect these babies. Human milk also provides gut protection from bacteria and infection. So I'm going to give you a little anatomy review, but when a baby takes in its mom's milk, it coats the baby's gut system, right? It kind of puts a film, a lining in that gut system. So any type of infection or bacteria that's introduced to that gut, it can't permeate. It can't get through to get into that baby's system because of that protective layer that's been placed in the gut by the breast milk, okay? So when a baby who is exclusively breastfed takes one bottle of formula, that one bottle of formula completely wipes away that protective factor that's been laid in that baby's gut system. It takes 2 to 6 to sometimes 8 weeks for that baby, if it were to go back to breast and get exclusive breast milk, it takes 2, 4 to 6, 8 weeks for that lining to get lined back up. Think about babies who are born and never go to the breast, never get breast milk or human milk. Those babies do not get that protective factor with their guts. So when you hear people say and talk about breastfed babies are healthier, breastfed babies this, it is true. And it's because, again, of the biological makeup of the milk that these babies are receiving. Human milk provides immunity for babies. So what does that mean? Every infection, every bacteria that this woman has ever been exposed to her entire life, right? All of us, we make antibodies to fight off all those things. When a woman has a baby and that mom puts that baby to the breast, those antibodies are being passed along, to that baby, right? I tell parents all the time, you are your baby's first immunization. You are setting up this baby's immune system for the rest of its life, okay? Again, it's a protective factor. When we have a baby who is born that is formula fed, they do not get that protection from their mom. And so it's left up to them and their little bodies to set up their immune system. It's a protective factor. Well, what does all this mean for us in Vanderbilt County? What does all this mean for the landscape of what we are seeing? And this is nothing new. I want y'all to know that. This has been going on forever. Vanderbilt County ranks low in the state compared to other counties in breastfeeding. This is a notorious stat. And so 2018 was some of the latest data that I can pull just off of the internet, but these are numbers from WIC, and I could probably guarantee you today that they're not much off. But for initiation, right, that's when a mom just puts the baby to the breast at least once after delivery. Initiation rate in the state of Indiana is basically 72%. In Vanderbilt County is 64%. So we are behind in the state as far as even putting baby to the breast at least one time. So that actually ranks us, we're tied for 80th place out of 92 counties when we are at least initiating breastfeeding. Again, this was in 2018. So we know that the definition of infant mortality is day of birth to at least until 1 year of age, right? So now we're going to take a look at our breastfeeding rates at 12 months. The state of Indiana compared to Vanderbilt County. 1 year out, we go from 72% to 9%, and in Vanderbilt County from 64% to 6%. It absolutely makes a difference in the health of these babies. So in my head, I'm like, 1 + 1 is 2, right? If Vanderbilt County has high infant mortality rates and low breastfeeding rates, what would it look like if we started to change the scale? If we started to increase our breastfeeding rates, could we see some type of difference in the infant mortality rates that we are seeing here in this community? And I'm not here to say this is the magic bullet, this is what's going to change it, but why not give these babies every chance possible of survival if this is another piece of the puzzle that we can put together? One study showed that breastfeeding accounts for racial differences in infant mortality just as much or just as well as low birth weight. Lynn talked about more of our black babies born in this community are born with lower birth weights than any other demographic. Well, our black breastfeeding rates in the community are low as well. And so there has to be an intentional effort to increase breastfeeding rates in the black community if we want to see some type of change in the numbers that we are seeing here in Vanderbilt County, okay? So if human milk has been a proven part of the solution, then why are we not latching on? Y'all see how I did that? Why are we not latching on to breastfeeding rates with just as much urgency as the ABCs and Stop Smoking in this community, in the landscape of what we are seeing here? I'm glad y'all asked. So I'm about to really talk about some hard truths here. Compared to any other county in the state of Indiana, we do sit in a very unique position. We have a formula company sitting in our backyard, right? Could that make a difference in the low breastfeeding rates that we are seeing here? And so I went back and did a little bit of research and took a little bit time to look at the history. They've been making formula here in this community since the early 1900s. I didn't realize that until I started doing my homework. And so the Johnson family has had great influence over this community for a very, very long time. In present day, the company's name has changed, but a lot of things still remain the same. They still remain one of the top formula-making companies in the U.S. In infant nutrition. And this company has provided stable income for many families in this community, right? Back in the day, in the 80s, there was a really big influx of black people in the black community that were hired on at Mead Johnson, right? Back then, if you got on at Mead Johnson in the black community, you made it. There was a sense of pride there. There was now income stability. You could move out of the South Side. You could move out of Uptown. You could go east. You could purchase a home. You can purchase a car. You had insurance. Your kids could go to private school. It meant something. People who, and everybody in here knows, at least if you grew up here in Indiana and you're in the black community, you know someone who worked at Mead Johnson and it bumped them up to middle class level. It was a sense of pride if you worked there, okay? And so this company has also financially contributed to many organizations in this community for a very long time, including healthcare facilities. Some of the big machinery, some of the advanced machinery that you see at some of our facilities were sponsored and donated. Those monies came from Mead Johnson, okay? That company also provided free formula to all its employees, relatives, and the delivering hospitals, right? Pre-baby friendly, each hospital received free formula from this company for the needs of all the babies that were born there, okay? And also pre-baby friendly, this facility also provided hospital discharge bags for everybody who delivered, right? Whether you were formula feeding or breastfeeding, you went home with a bag of goodies. Inside that diaper bag was a can of powdered formula. So it's a marketing tactic, right? If I go home and I'm nursing my baby, I'm having trouble, I need something, I'm going to open that bag. This is the formula hospital gave me. This must be good. I'm going to the store. This is what I'm going to purchase for my baby, right? Also, for many years, Indiana, WIC won the bid. This company won the bid to provide formula for WIC throughout the state. It changed a few years ago, but I'm pretty sure what I read the other day, Indiana now has won that, this company has now won the bid back. And so this is who our most vulnerable population is getting their formula from. So when they're on WIC and that supplemental package runs out and they need to go buy more formula, what are they buying? They're buying what was given to them at WIC. So my point is, the controversy, in my opinion, for many city leaders, top-level healthcare administrators, church clergy, and community members is that the local formula company has been intertwined within the functionality of this community for a very long time. We're different than anybody else in any other county in this state. So, why would anyone stand up and say, breastfeed more, formula feed less, when that message could rock the stability and foundation of what this community has been comfortable dealing with? No, not yet, sorry. That was a little shake up. I threw that in there. So, this is why we should stand up and support, promote, and educate about breastfeeding. His name is Grayson Ryder. If there was anybody that we ever wanted to stand up for, let's stand up for Grayson. I think you may have to. I'm sorry. Go back. A couple. Yep.
I asked you, Lord, you answered. A little one you gave. The hardest part I never knew was that little one you take. But Lord, I trust you now. I know that you are good. And Jesus, I was wondering if you would hug him once for me. Hold him up real close. Let him sit upon your knee and tell him all the things we teach him about you. Whisper in his ear one more simple truth. Tell him that you love him and that we love him too.
For Grayson. Why not? He's just one of the many that we've lost. I said I wasn't going to cry. So I was talking to my daughter about this, and she said, "Mom, before these babies were statistic, they had to live first." And I often think we forget about that. When we see the numbers, we hear the numbers, it's shocking. We go home, we go back to our everyday lives. Everybody here is going to leave here and go someplace else. I'm going to go home and I'm going to see Grayson's grandma at the grocery store. I'm going to see his dad at the ball games. I'm going to see his mom at work. You know, they mentioned before I live in 47713. Their lives and loss are my lived experience, which is a lot different from everybody in this room. And so I think it's imperative as a community that we promote, educate, and support all efforts and all families in their quest to provide human milk for their babies. This includes every level of government, every person in political power. I'm calling y'all out today if you want to see something different than what we are seeing and experiencing right now. All healthcare agencies and all community members. I'm committed to doing my part. Are you? What's going to be different when you walk out of this room today than what you've been doing the past 15 years that these babies have been dying? And so, y'all let me have my soapbox. I'm going to jump up off of it. But I do want to thank Dakota and Jordan for allowing me to honor the loss of their baby to see it. And so we all have a lot to do. All of us should be playing a part in what we are seeing here in this community. So thank you.
I'm going to call Tori and Trinity up here if they're still running around. Oh, right there. You guys want to grab these? And does anybody have any questions? I'm going to start with that real quick. Yeah, for the panelists. Yes, please.
Thank you, Larissa, for, I've always, as a breastfeeding mom of two, I'm very passionate about that also, and kind of the reasons why behind some things in our county. But are hospitals required to document why no initiation, or is lactation, do they document maybe why there was no initiation of breastfeeding during hospital stays?
It's always a family's choice in how they want to provide breast milk for their babies. But if the question is, if a mom comes in, she decides she's going to breastfeed, and for some reason she wants to supplement, yes, that is documented why she wants to supplement. For the most part, is mother's choice. And then we also have to document that she has been educated on the risk factors of this supplementation. And every woman who comes to deliver should be educated and given information on the benefits of breastfeeding. That was one of the tenets of Baby Friendly and the education that we had to provide. But I will tell you now that neither hospital has the Baby Friendly designation any longer. I will put that out there.
That is why it's so important to start breastfeeding education prior to pregnancy. Again, making sure that women are supported, especially in their homes. Once they get home, breastfeeding's hard. Breastfeeding's really hard. And that is one of the reasons why our home visitation program, Pre to 3, all of our clinical staff are certified lactation consultants. It's not an easy, if you breastfed for 2 years, you know how, 2 children, it's hard. It's not something that's easy. And so our community needs to surround these women and give them support and all the education that they need.
Is that something that EVSC does or high schools do, like education for like pipeline students?
That is a good question. I do not know the answer to that.
Okay, because AHEC might be interested in providing that education to maybe an audience that you think would be appropriate for that.
Yeah, I do have a relationship. I can talk to healthcare, and she's in my office. Actually, her name's Diana Butler. Okay. She's right next door to me. So get with me, and I'll talk to her about that, and we can see what we can do.
Thanks. I think COVID-19 really exacerbated how important breastfeeding and formula feeding and just being educated about formula, educating yourself, educating your friends. You know, there was a formula shortage. Enfamil was one of those formula shortages. I had a lot of friends that experienced that, and Gerber is a great alternative. And there are other formulas, so just research and educate yourself on the importance of all of those. That's all I have. Thank you.
I will say that during COVID, there was a little bit of a panic with the formula shortage, and we did see an uptake of moms initiating breastfeeding in the hospital or pumping, right? I do want to make it clear that pumping is breastfeeding. You are still providing human milk for your human baby, right? Pumping is breastfeeding. I will say that all day long. And so a lot of people and families don't know that's an option as well to provide breast milk for their babies. And shared breast milk. That is not, again, not talked about a lot, but we know it happens. Right? It's not uncommon for someone to bring their sister's milk with them to help supplement their baby shortly after delivery, just to get things coming along. It's definitely becoming more of the norm.
Hi, everyone. So I actually have a 9-month-old, and I was born in Jamaica. So in my culture, you breastfeed. It could be because we are a poverty-stricken country, but I'm pretty sure the infant mortality in Jamaica, a very, very impoverished, very poor country. So to me, when I came to America, it was kind of odd that when I spoke with my black friends, and it was abnormal that they breastfed. And I thought, well, that's weird. Why don't you breastfeed? It's just natural, you know, you give birth, your body makes this milk, when you give birth, it's natural to breastfeed. Even to this day, you can hear I'm nervous. Even to this day, people, when I tell them that I breastfeed, I have a 9-month-old and I'm still breastfeeding. And I plan to breastfeed because I understand, as a nurse background as well, the benefits of it. But a lot of my sisters don't understand that. So how do we get it to where it's a cultural thing, to where we get it into our culture? Because I realize that it's to me, when I speak with my friends, it's a weird thing to breastfeed, and that's so abnormal that your body makes breast milk for babies, and it's weird to breastfeed. It's not making any sense. So my thing is, how do we as a community now get it to where we are making it a natural thing for us to breastfeed?
I say, for one, take a look. For one, look in the mirror. Again, look at everything that I just presented and what we have grown up around, right? Formula is normal to most people in this community. So yeah, breastfeeding is different and strange. When we speak more of the Black community, it's going to take the Black people in the community to create that type of culture, to know that this is normal, this is better, this will help, right? There are so many people in this community who are so taboo to breast. That's the first start. And so when we understand that the seeds have to be planted within us first in order for it to go out. Again, I'm the only Black IBCLC in Southern Indiana. I've been fighting this fight a long time, that has felt like by myself. And so things definitely have to change, and it's going to start with us. I'm not expecting anybody outside of the Black community to now give us what we need. We have what we need. We just have to take the steps and make it happen.
Can I just say real quick, as far as education, so I'm fortunate to where I have my own insurance through work. So I'm not on Medicaid. However, there is no education from our physicians. I will tell you that. I did not get this is why breastfeeding is important. This is why you should breastfeed your babies. I did get formula that went home with me that I put in the trash. So to your point, there's no emphasis on breastfeeding, and we wonder why the people that are marginalized, that really don't know, is because our physicians are not talking to us. Is because hopefully, now that we have this conversation out, hopefully it's our community people encouraging Black women, we're encouraging each other to breastfeed.
Hello, I'm Deborah. Larissa, thank you. I have a question regarding the development of the infant and their cognitive ability with breastfeeding. My daughter breastfed her children until they had teeth, so and they're little whizzes. So,
Research. There is research from here to the end that shows that breastfed babies do score higher, right, on IQ tests. So that data's out there. It supports brain nutrition, everything. Formula companies spend billions of dollars every year to mimic what's in breast milk, right? It will never be done, not to the totality of what this mom's milk can offer this baby. So yes, it does. And she's going to kill me, but my granddaughter will be 3 in a couple of weeks, and she still wants her milkies. So she asked me for some the other day. I was like, girl, I can't help you. But even that is taboo to even talk and discuss, but it's normal. The average age of providing breast milk around the world is 4. And we're like gawking at people because the baby's a year, right? We just have to, but it starts with us to change the perspective of it.
Hello, everyone. My name's April Goebel. Kind of a question for all of you, but directly Larissa. I know I've been a nurse for 21 years, and I know for healthcare in the hospital, it's easy for my coworkers when we all were pregnant and had our babies that we could go pump and do all those things at work. I find that very hard for some of my friends now who have babies and are trying to breastfeed. I know we have education, health department. Do you all offer those things at your positions for mothers to do that privately without getting tagged?
At the hospital, yes. Like, we have pumping rooms. People who are pumping can go at any time. I mean, we were baby friendly, so like there shouldn't be any issues with anyone at my employment place. But when the ACA came about, Obamacare, legislation changed, and insurance companies then had to provide breast pumps for all women. That changed the game a little bit, because now women who didn't have access to personal breast pumps now had access through insurance. And so at the same time, federal laws, state laws got enacted that women, anybody who has a business with 20 or more employees, they don't have a choice but to give that woman time. It may have to be unpaid time to go and pump and she gets a reasonable amount of time. There's no set time. You can't tell me that I only have 15 minutes when it takes me 20. It takes me 10 to get set up and walk from one end to the factory to the other. And so there is lots of supports. There's federal laws, there's state laws, and there's more access to breast pumps than ever before.
But that doesn't mean it changes. And employees should not be made to feel guilty for taking time off to pump and be able to, yeah. And there is conversation around, we are getting an opportunity to be at the table with big business now, local big business, and having a voice from public health about the need for these kind of things, and not only pumping our breasts, but getting time off for our prenatal visits.
And I will say one more thing about that. Women who work in the service industry, our restaurant workers, our fast food workers, are more vulnerable people and population. They are the ones who have been disadvantaged, right, when it comes to allowing them break time to pump. I will tell you, and I don't have any problem saying this, McDonald's was the #1 rule breaker and company who we had a lot of problems with. But I will tell you, we have a wonderful person at the Department of Labor. He probably don't want me to say his name. But when I tell you he is a champion of enforcing the workplace laws for giving moms the time and place to pump, other than the bathroom, it better not be a bathroom. He came to speak to us at the hospital, and how much of a priority is this to you? He said, child labor laws, pumping laws, right? It means that much to him. So we have a champion here. I have never hesitated to call and say, this is what's happening. But if you have a woman who's working at McDonald's and she's the only one pumping, there's fear in reporting that they are breaking the law and not allowing me because there's fear of retaliation. Well, we know who called, because she's the only one here who just had a baby and that's pumping. So it really puts people, those women, in a really hard and difficult position. It's easier to just formula feed. I have to have my job, right? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sabrina Cawthorne, and I am the Director of Minority Health at Community Action Program, and I'm not sure if Ashley Smith is in here. I just kind of want to tag off of something that Shelley said, that we do need to begin here in our community, and as far as our physicians providing that education. And I have been working with Dr. Paraquarti, and I also spoke with Larissa. So we, and Lee and her, we are looking at doing some infomortality forms, specifically for the 47713, 1114, those zip codes, to help provide that education on an ongoing basis for our Black moms. As far as providing resources and facilities in your agency, we do provide that. Our federal grant requires that we provide a space for our moms to pump with no time limit. We don't want to rush them. We have a relaxation room for them, just take the time to do what they need to do. That is essential. As far as Larissa said, breastfeeding, pumping is breastfeeding. A lot of moms do not know that. They feel like they just the baby has to latch on in order to be considered breastfeeding. So there is legislation right now that we are working on through Indiana Minority Health to enforce that pump law in the state and in the community. So that is very crucial. So if you're working for an agency that does not provide that type of facility, talk about it. Tell them that there is a law that they have to do that, to provide that facilities for those parents. And if anyone is interested in working on any kind of infomortality forms with me, I can provide you my information, because we're really making that a priority this year.
Thank you so much to all of you. I have a question that may be for more than one of you. So I'm the Director of Gender, Women's Sexuality Studies here, and I co-teach a Biological Perspectives on Sex and Gender class, and was really shocked to find out that we canvassed our students and none of them had any sex education in Evansville or around Indiana besides abstinence only. So they were not really familiar with human reproductive systems, including breastfeeding. And so I think it's really important that physicians teach their patients, but I think we need to start a lot younger, and that should include breastfeeding, and that might help normalize. But I would love to hear, what's being done to bring a better sex education to the EVSC. Not on you, just like what your thoughts on that are. What can we do to help?
Well, it's in Indiana, when you're talking about the reproductive system, it's affecting all areas. It's affecting education, it's affecting healthcare, the things that we can and cannot do. We are very limited. I do know that students are, learning about the body in health class and things of that nature. As far as limitations and what they can and cannot learn and certain information, I know that the state code is affecting everyone. And so it's just going to take people advocating like you all in
protest. I mean, I'm like ready to get out there and with signs.
Yeah. So there's only, it's not my area, but there's only so much that we can do. And I know as much as you know just by doing research and hearing the things on the news as far as, women and their bodies and rights and things of that nature. Just know it's affecting all areas, including education.
I agree. Call your legislators. I don't know if, I'm just going to call them out. I don't know if Senator Toms is here. He hears from me. I don't think he listens, but I think we have the obligation to use the voices and the information we have. This is part of a broad spectrum, quite frankly, as a clinician, or even my voice is being muffled. Okay, there are things that I cannot even say to patients and family. as of this legislative year, thanks to a court that decided that a ban on gender-affirming care for youth may go forward. I am not able to even talk about this with the families with whom I have established a level of trust for years, and now they're left hanging. Now they are having to go to, I will call them sanctuary cities in the neighboring state, not the state to the south, not the state to the east, to receive the care they deserve as human beings. This touches across sexuality, it touches across gender expression. So yes, this folds in very well to the ban on choice, across reproductive freedom, on access to contraceptive and planning, because you know what's going to be next. So this is part of a system, and if we sit by and we sit down and we think this is not within the four walls that we occupy as clinicians, as therapists, as nurses, as social workers, as teachers, as administrators and parental supporters in the school system, as people in public health, we are deceiving ourselves. From a public health standpoint, we see more freedom being given to guns in this community by the legislature than to human rights for health care, than to clinicians, than to nurses' right to speak the truth. That's all I'll say at this time.
And I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but there is recent legislation to even our most at-risk mothers, those mothers on Medicaid, being able to have a choice of what long-term contraceptive is available to them. So this struggle is real. We know that women that prolong a pregnancy greater than 18 months have a much higher chance of carrying the next baby to term. So we want to be able to give those women the same choice as women that have private insurance on the form of birth control that they would like to use to space their pregnancy out. So again, everyone has a voice. Everyone should know who their legislators are to be able to give women the voice that they need and to be in charge of their own reproductive health. And yes, we do see women in the clinic, in our STI clinic, and other clinics that we have at the Vanderburgh County Health Department that don't understand their basic anatomy and understand that they're urinating from their vagina. And they just don't have that basic understanding of their sexual health.
Everyone is familiar, I trust, with what happened in Brown County a few years ago, because those who had power in this state to make certain things priorities for public health chose not to. HIV, hepatitis C are very real and also fold into the threats we all face as a community. So every new case of that occurs is a loss on every single one of us, whether or not we see it.
And Lynn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that legislation, that is being sponsored by a local legislator from Warwick County, correct? Okay, so it's hitting home if y'all are not paying attention.
Jerry, you can talk loud.
As a CLC, I work with the Pre-to-3 program. I'm a nurse with the program. I'm also a lactation consultant, and I'm very passionate about breastfeeding and supporting moms and families who want to do that. My question to you is, I'm hearing from some families that, when we're educating prenatally, there's a gap between, what we are saying and then the practicum, them actually being able to do that in a hospital setting. I have been told, I won't mention who told me this, but I have been told that there is a difference between how likely it is for a black mom to be offered a bottle versus a white mom who both come in wanting to breastfeed. So I would like to know what your thoughts are for how can we better support these moms to transition from hospital to home? How can we help them to really advocate for themselves when they're in that setting, that they don't want a bottle for their baby, that they don't want a pacifier if that's what their decision is. And then the other thing is, when I'm seeing them go into the hospital for that 1-week checkup, if baby's weight is not where they want it, we're sticking them on formula right away instead of helping to support them to continue with breastfeeding or pumping or whatever is going to work best for them.
Absolutely. First, I want to say I didn't know that you were a CLC. So I want to say, twin, where have you been? Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, research supports exactly what you said, that Black moms are offered formula and supplementation at a higher rate than white women who are there to breastfeed and nurse their babies. And so one thing is, how do we teach them to advocate for themselves? Education from the beginning. They should know and understand what their goals are, what troubleshooting looks like, who I am, who you are, how to contact us, what we can do for them to wrap our knowledge around them in our arms and help them to be able to meet their goals and be successful in what we do. And I'm just going to be real with you. I have had patients say to me, when a non-Black LC went into their room, I was told she wouldn't even touch me. She wouldn't even get close to me. Like, I can't believe you came in here and you actually, I've heard that more than once. And so confronting, discussing, being real about what's happening in the community and in those healthcare facilities. But we have to give the power to our women, for them to know and understand that they do have a voice, they do have a choice, and we need to plant those seeds early, even before they get pregnant, right? They have to know all of this information before they even think about their family planning and their future. No, Lynn was saying they don't have the luxury of seeing their moms breastfeed. I was the first person in my family to ever breastfeed, and it wasn't very, very supported. My mom, oh man, I was living at home when I had my first daughter, my oldest, and her thing was, and I didn't realize this, why she was so hard on me or why she was, so taken aback by it. But she had a sister who had 8 children, and she died of breast cancer before she was 40. And so in my mom's mind, breastfeeding is related to breast cancer. We know that's not the case, but this is what she believed all her life. So if it was out of fear for me that she saw me breastfeeding and she didn't understand, and then on top of that, I have a sibling who works at that formula company. So Thanksgiving holidays are very interesting. But I tell people I breastfed because they told me not to. And I was just going to be stubborn and do whatever I wanted to do. But I'm no different than a lot of other people in this community. They've never seen anyone in their family breastfeed before. It's totally foreign, and they have no clue about it.
In the fear that she's talking about, so you guys can connect this back to education, these are the families of the parents of the children who we are seeing. So the mother who is stressed, the kids who attend whatever school, in this area, the kids are coming to school, they're stressed because mom's stressed at home, mom, they don't have adequate resources. And so that's where it's just a continuum. And we're seeing those kids come to school, they are emotionally dysregulated, they are being misidentified as special education, when in turn it's not that they don't have the ability to do it. Their amygdala, as Dr. Stratton stated, is stressed, and when they're stressed, they can't think with their prefrontal cortex. And when they don't have that support at home, then the neural pathways in the brain is not developing. And so, again, one of the things that we really want you all to understand today is we're all family, and we're all connected.
And these are the siblings of the babies who have been passing away. These kids are mourning. They're stressed. They're so young. They don't understand. There's so many layers to this.
It's multifaceted, for sure.
Right, so to be more specific, can we knit some of this data together? What Dr. Brooks compellingly portrayed about chronic absenteeism, we have, if we have to get down to the granular, we have names and places, okay, of where these households are. We also have names and places and families who've been affected by deaths. Okay, so what's the commonality? Is there another overlay? And, well, how does that overlay look on the red line map we've also seen?
Again, thank you guys so much for your time and for enlightening us with your wisdom in your areas of expertise. We really appreciate that. Sherry actually elaborated on a question that I kind of was thinking about back here, but it also sparked with people who have preterm labor. And I know 18 years ago, whenever I had my baby, she wasn't breathing on her own, so she had to go put in a machine, and for someone who wants to breastfeed, that can be very complicating because you don't get the immediate skin to skin. You start pumping, but then over a period of time, especially as they're in the NICU, you struggle with stimulation to be able to keep producing milk, and that can be very disheartening on mothers, especially when you don't have people who are really pushing and advocating and educating the importance behind the breast milk. So what can we do as advocates to help these mothers, especially, like you had said, the social determinants of health, they're not getting these early on appointments to explain, in some cases, how beneficial this is to them. But then if they go through consequences or struggles in their pregnancy, and they have a preterm labor, they start deciding, well, I'm not going to do breast milk because it's too complicated to do, instead of having advocates. So what is something as nurses in our field, or areas that we can really advertise or advocate that you can still do this and help with stimulation for moms who can't necessarily feed by breast but are pumping and are having a hard time?
Sure. So, and I can't speak for the other healthcare organization, but I can tell you that at the Women's Hospital, one, if a mom is threatening early labor or whatever, and she needs to be admitted in antepartum, let's say she's 18 weeks and she needs to be on bed rest for the rest of her pregnancy, we do have a lactation consultant that's solely dedicated to the NICU. And so because there's a chance that these babies could come early, she provides education, and well, they do, there's a couple, they provide education and support for those women pretty early on in their admissions. They're being touched on, pumps are being ordered, right? Pump education is being done with them before they deliver. And so further down the line, if a woman comes in and her baby goes to NICU, for us, our mandate at our hospital is that we get this mom pumping within 4 hours of delivery. That's the goal, if she's able to do that. And at Women's, we have lactation 24/7, which is very different and unusual that in most hospitals in Indiana. I can probably sit here and tell you that at Women's, we have the most IBCLC in any facility from the top to the bottom of the state. So there's lots of support there for those moms who they're separated from their babies, right? And it's ongoing support. It's not one and done, here's your pump, we'll see you later. There's someone in the NICU every day going from pod to touch base and support those moms who are separated from their babies. We have outpatient support. Even when they go home, they can come back and see us, because now if that's their goal, we want to get the baby to the breast now, right? They've been pumping for 10 weeks, and if their goal is to nurse and put their babies to the breast, we're there to support them to do that. I hope that answers your question.
I just wanted to mention the Indiana Department of Health, along with the Indiana Center for Breastfeeding, I believe it is, there's a scholarship. It is rolling for someone who wants to be an IBCLC. I have applied for this scholarship, but I'm mentioning it in case there's anyone else, any future nurses. You don't have to be a nurse to be an IBCLC, by the way, but that's the highest level of certification that you can obtain to support breastfeeding and lactation, and so I think it's really good. I was told that there are about 500, a little over 500 in the state, and only 4 to 5 of color, and so she is one of them. So I encourage you, if you need information, I can hand my card out. I'm happy to do that to provide resources for anybody who's interested in applying for that scholarship.
Okay, at the respect of our panelists and everybody else's time, I think we're going to have to wrap this up. I believe everybody in this room could talk for hours about this very passionate topic and all that's been presented. But I have a list going back here. If you have an organization that you want everybody in the room to hear about, I'd be happy to get the email out and the contact. And then also, if you have questions that weren't answered, if you could just write the name of the person you'd like that addressed to, I would ensure that they would get to their email. So thank you guys all for coming. Thank you so much, and be on the lookout for more topics.
Yes, 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 yes.
Phenomenal job.
Thank you. Thank you.